Hello, 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 everybody. It's Jerry, the East Coast Viking Hanley here, and my good friend JP, Jonathan Pishner from Apex Counseling, based in Morgantown. However, if you happen to hear us and you're not in Morgantown, feel free to reach out to either one of us, as we can always help people out virtually as well. As usual, we're here for our chats about just things that really everybody is struggling with. Like, and a lot of people try to figure out, okay, this is my situation. How should I decide the next step that I want to take? And today's topic is about shiny new things. And like I'm not here to tell you, and I doubt JP is either, that new things are bad. It's like we're definitely not going to say shiny new things are bad. Ignore them. However, they do come at a cost. So hopefully, we'll give you some tips and strategies to really figuring out, like which shiny new things that catch your interest are worth some of your attention or looking into, which to maybe shelf for later, and which to maybe just completely ignore and let that go through. So again, as usual, I'll let JP kind of jump into it from there, and hopefully have a good talk, get something out of this.
Yeah, so we came up with this because both my clients and Jerry's clients, and really anybody who is attempting to make any kind of positive changes or experience any growth, is vulnerable to really easily getting distracted with new stuff once the thing you're doing becomes boring, becomes routine. So basically, with my clients, here's what this will look like. We'll be working a course of cognitive behavior therapy, which, if you distill it down to its core sentence, is using your thoughts to control your feelings. And once people start getting moderately okay at that, then sometimes they'll start saying, "Well, I think I need a different tool for this thing I'm experiencing." Usually the answer to that is no, you actually don't. But what happens is the novelty wears off and the excitement of using the new thing wears off. And so the felt sense of less energy around it feels like there's something wrong with it. Same thing with an exercise program. If you're doing an exercise program right, you really probably aren't doing too many different things. But how easy is it to like see somebody doing this thing on Instagram and suddenly want to like roll that into your exercise routine because now you've got something new, shiny, and exciting. But what happens is people accidentally use that to get in the way of their actual growth because now they're distracted with this new thing when the old thing was working just fine. So I think a lot of today is going to be about how to not get distracted, and what are the very, very few times where maybe it is right to take the shiny new thing and run away with it.
I think one of the key phrases that you used there was, like, basically when you lose focus on what's helping you grow or your growth. Like I said, focusing on that, because I said, like, whether it is fitness, business, better habits, like relationships, health. So like growing is basically what we're always constantly trying to do. And what came to mind actually, like, was an image. To tell you the truth, I suddenly thought of that iceberg meme where it just shows, an entire iceberg, from like the side, and you can see the part above the water, but then you also see the enormous part underneath that's helping it stay floating.
Mhm.
And those shiny new things are those part of the iceberg above the water. That's that visible part. That's what keeps getting our attention. It's so easy to forget about all those things, or even if we don't forget, we just don't give them the attention that they deserve, that are really what's keeping that part floating. And like you said, part of it is just, like, on the one hand, we're blessed to be in a particular society, where there are so many new things happening all the time, but it's also a downside because it's the same society is intent on getting our attention with those shiny new things. So whether it's actual selling and marketing, or for actual business and money, like, is this a fad, or is this something that's actually going to help make my life better? Or for attention, like, we're in an attention economy right now. So whether it's actual economy, or just people who get their dopamine hits, their feelings of self-worth from how much attention they get on social media, they are going to be more likely to show you things that they feel will get you attention, not necessarily things that are actually gonna like help you or make things better from that point on. So it's like there's a lot. So the natural gravitational pull is definitely working towards the shiny new things. We need the
Mhm.
tool, yeah, we need those tools and habits to be able to actually make the decisions based on what we're really seeing and what we know, rather than just what we're hearing.
Yeah. And so one of the things that in preparation for this, I kind of sat down and thought about was how long should a person stick with a thing before either adding to it, moving on from it, or whatever. And it seemed like the thing that was the average was 6 months. Seems like the amount of time to stick with something, as far as I can tell, whether it's psychological growth or physical growth. Uh, but a lot of people will accidentally drastically shorten that time span, not because they can't keep the idea of 6 months in their mind, but because of the felt sense of not enough happening. Give you a great example. Matter of fact, the word is now starting to really enter popular vocabulary. So fear of missing out, right? One of the things that happens very easily to a lot of people is they're sticking to their plan for a few weeks, but they see somebody else doing a thing. And what enters their emotional state is, oh man, they're doing this, therefore I should probably be doing this. And there's a felt sense that something is now wrong because I'm not doing this
Yeah.
thing that this other person's doing. And so one of the things that I encourage people to do a lot is whether you do 6 months or whatever time frame is anytime you start wanting to mess with the plan is to be suspicious of that emotional state and to be suspicious of whether or not that's leading you in a right direction, because our emotions are really good indicators of a lot of stuff, but when it comes to sticking to a plan, our emotions are really not good indicators of anything. You know, they're great indicators of like, do we like this person? They're terrible indicators of what should I be doing right now, because most of the time our emotions will drag us into something completely irrelevant and meaningless.
Yeah, that's such a good point with that. And it actually, like I'm actually be curious how often you use this type of advice with somebody, because I feel like one of the things I've heard a lot is, when you have that like instinct or decision to make something like that, is, like wait 24 hours or just sleep on it a night, etc., something like that. When it comes to like changing up things that we're doing now because we've seen it or because it's been advised to us, whatever. How do you kind of put that into practice with helping people do that?
Well, that's a good question because one of the reasons that I picked a fairly long time frame is because, of course, the questions I help people answer are pretty life changing.
Mhm.
Should I end my marriage? Should I move to another town? So there's a lot of decisions and growth points that I help people with that maybe you're closing off a chapter of your life, and so you got to be really pretty sure. So one of the things that we'll do, let's say I'm helping somebody decide whether they're staying in their marriage or leaving, and they decide they want to try staying. Is I'll tell them is like, okay, you got to commit then to not only 6 months of staying, but 6 months of doing everything in your power to make this marriage as good as possible. And what I'll do is I'll front load for them a lot of what they can expect, because what they can expect is 2 weeks in, they'll want to really get off the program. And they'll want to say, well, my spouse really isn't responding to this. Maybe this was a bad idea. And so that felt sense then starts to become a problem. But what really happens with a lot of these decisions is they require so much sitting with them that you can't trust your instant emotions. It's kind of like You got a big ship in the ocean. Use the iceberg example. If you're close enough to see the iceberg, you might have already hit it because you got to crank the wheel over and it takes forever to turn. Well, the same thing applies to a lot of people's growth points is once you start the process, it starts taking a while, or it can take a while, excuse me, uh, for people to really experience the benefit of it. So if I'm helping somebody try and decide if they can save the marriage, they've really got to commit to 6 months of consistent work on the marriage, because if they just hang out for 6 months but only did 2 weeks of actual work on it, we didn't learn anything.
So one of the best things that I think I took out of what you just said is how important it is for you or anybody you're working with to have the best upfront information about a realistic time frame of what you want to do. Because I could definitely apply that with fitness as well. Like,
Mm-hmm.
we want people to understand that fitness is it's about stacking the work, and I mean being consistent in putting the work in, and that you're not going to see that magical change in just a few weeks. And like you said, like with behavioral life possible things, another really common place that I can see this definitely happening. I know this happens, and is one of my personal places that I try to make sure I'm remaining within a box. Is, for example, just like financial decisions or investing. So many shiny new things, you know. Um, so understanding going in what your ideal framework would be in terms of risk. Do I want to try to make, like using that example, do I want to try to make money now, or do I want to make decisions that will pay off in like 1 to 3 years, or is this a retirement decision? And again, talking, you and I are huge believers and experts, like each of our fields, but that's where talking to a very good financial advisor could help out, is
Mm-hmm.
understanding where you want to see, when you want to reap the benefits of the rewards. These are the decisions you should be looking at in this case. So like that type of thought process, because like I said, with fitness, that's a huge one. And it's funny that we're recording this in the early part of summer, because a big thing that we only see this at our business right now, this time of year, is people coming in and asking about short 6-8 week training packages.
Hmm.
We made the decision a couple of years ago to make our shortest packages 3 months. It's like you just like with exception, like if you're not even in town for 3 months, like you're moving or you're only here for the summer, we'll work with those. But if somebody's coming in and otherwise only just simply wants to work less than 3 months, we won't work with you for that. Like we will, we'll tell you where we think might work better, but we won't work you with that because we want to build up foundation and build up the work. But I said we only see that this time of year because people are thinking of it as like a summer thing.
Sure. Sure.
It's like, no.
Well, and that kind of goes into your point where you were saying is what is the benefit somebody can expect to get? I would imagine that you can't expect to actually see any benefit in less than 3 months.
Right. Like you will see benefits, but they're not permanent. And that's the big, I mean, they're never permanent. Couldn't like to be official.
Sure.
I just feel like I had to clarify that. But they're not the type that are going to last. I just said, like, you can feel better, you'll feel better within usually 2 to 3 weeks of working out. But if you
Mhm.
stop 2 weeks later, you're not going to feel better for longer. you know, like stuff like that. Like your muscles will be a little bit stronger from being like awakened if they haven't done anything. But again, if you stop after a couple of months, that's not going to last very long. You need to build up on that. But one of the things where, like, when it comes to introducing these new things, you're interested. I mean, just like you said, I definitely believe in, yeah, don't emotionally make the decision to make a change or addition like right now. Like I said, like the times to do that are very small. So let it go. But if you still think about it, what I would say is in a lot of cases, you're like, this is not life changing stuff that I'm talking about right now, or at least not the big
Good
decision.
distinction.
Yeah, but if it's just something that's caught your eye, you can't stop thinking about it. Is figure out how you can add it in or work it in at a proper time frame. Like using my example, fitness. There is a lot of correct ways to do things. Like there is more than just one correct. Like red flag number one is any fitness expert that tells you there's one best way or one correct way. It's like, okay, that person's selling you something or has no idea what they're talking about. Because there are lots of ways to get to the desired result when it comes to fitness, strength, or conditioning. There's lots of ways to make somebody lose weight. There's lots of ways to make somebody gain muscle. There's lots of ways to help somebody jump higher, things like that. So anytime somebody comes in here and has a specific request because they're curious or they just like something or they miss something, they're like, I haven't done this in like 2 months. Can I do it again? Or like, hey, I saw this or I checked about this drill. What do you think? You know, I will, for one, tell them what I really think about the drill, the exercise. But if it's something that can be useful and they really seem to want to do it, I will let them know that we will look to work it in their next plan or program. I will not change what they're working on now because of that shiny new thing. But because there are so many correct ways to get it done, I will look at getting it, I will look at working it in for them later.
And what a terrific way to balance it, because since one of the reasons we fall into this is because of our hunger for novelty. So you're not rewarding that instant aha shiny thing, but you're building it in a way that's going to be essentially useful without being any sort of detriment. Like it'll keep the energy up to the new novelty, but without getting in any sort of way of the program.
Exactly. And I said, and that lets you continue to build on it ideally rather than completely change things. So you can continue that way that those things that do the work, those things that are leading to your growth can remain the main portion of your routine, of your habits, of your behavior, of your fitness program, whatever it is, of your business. And you're simply making, like I said, you're working it in to see if something will work later rather than, like you said, just changing it all.
But let's sit with something useful out of it too. Right at the end of what you just said there. So somebody comes in with their shiny new exercise. Uh, on average, I'm sure it's different for everyone, but on average, how many exercises in a routine that you make for somebody?
Oh, um, anywhere from four. Okay, anywhere from four to I'm going to say like 8 to 10, but some of those may actually be multiple exercises themselves.
Sure, fair enough. Let's just call it 6 or 7 to be done.
Oh, okay,
Uh,
great. Okay, I didn't know where you were going with that question. So okay, cool.
yeah, no, just on the average. So 6 or 7 exercises maybe on the average. We change one for the shiny new object, which is a net change of less than 20% of the program. That's actually a great thing to generalize to almost every other place. Because if somebody wants to build in the new thing but without letting it become a distraction, uh, you can do that as long as it's small change. So, let's say somebody wants to try a new thing, a completely new set of exercises, like, oh man, I want to do more yoga. Well, you wouldn't completely scrap your weightlifting regimen and replace it with yoga,
Mhm.
but you can make small changes to see what works, and then, but just making sure to not make them so big that they are detrimental or distracting to what you're presently doing. Same thing with you were talking about the financial stuff, like not getting distracted as part of your financial plan. You gave me one maybe a couple of weeks ago. You had that game thing that you're interested in,
Mhm.
which I wrote down the name of and promptly did nothing else with because it wasn't time. Uh,
Cool.
and because I didn't want to get distracted with the other several things I was looking at. But it's on the list of things to look at when it's time to start adding new stuff. Uh, And for the people listening, here's going to be the hard part, because when I say, yeah, sure, you can get distracted with this shiny thing and make small changes, it's hard to know how small is the right amount of small, because
Ooh, I
I
like that.
arbitrarily made up a number and said, oh yeah, as long as it's not more than 20% of the program. But I mean, that was kind of a made up bullshit thing right off the top of my head. The point is keeping it some type of small, so you're not getting in the way of your overall very useful program.
Hmm. That's really good. And one of the things I actually wanted to go into feeds right off that is when deciding those things to change, like you're saying. One good rule of thumb, I think, is to look to make your initial foundation automatic, like first, in a way. So, like with the program, like with the fitness program, it would be that idea of, okay, like I've got my foundation down, I have my technique down. Let me make sure that the main program is still built like on everything that I've been doing and I know is working. And let me only use smaller pieces, like you were saying, to try some of these new exercises or some of these new drills, as long as I don't think that it will actually hurt the program. Um, Business wise, this is huge. And actually, I just heard a super successful speaker talk about this past weekend named Bobby Castro. Um, but is continuing to focus on your main business and not trying to start seven other businesses without that one working first. Like make the main one work to the point where it's working, ideally without you if you're a business owner, or simply you're doing your job so well that you can look at something else. Or in a foundation or habits like relationship, making better habits, make sure that those things are actually happening first. Like really feel better in your relationship, or at least in how you're controlling yourself and your activities in a relationship, your mindset, whatever it may be. Or make sure that you're actually making healthier, better habits routinely. You didn't just simply do better for like a week. Like have I really improved in this main thing? Then it's like, if the answer is to those questions is yes, then look at maybe, like if that shiny new thing is still interesting to you, then maybe look at adding it in or trying it out. So let those other things settle first, and actually like settle and remain the foundation.
Yeah. You said something there that prompted me to think about something in a particular way. There's a lot of things that are not obvious, that are the shiny new thing, the distracting thing, that can become a problem. And so I'll give a good example, because this one comes up in the counseling room sometimes. You got people working on a relationship, and they start kind of like reconnecting and knitting the relationship back together, and they go on a date or two, and then they go on a week-long vacation together, and the whole thing falls apart and is a great big problem. And uh, the thing that is not obvious about that, to most people, is like, wow, why would going on a vacation together be a big problem? But if you think of almost anything that you want to improve at in terms of a program, not a computer program, but like a program for growth. Uh, so like, all right, I want to fix my relationship. So what's step one of that? What's step two? What's step three? What's step four? It's a little easier for it to become obvious of, oh, we just went on a 2 hour date together and that was relatively successful. That doesn't mean step two is spend 16 hours in a car together and then 5 days in a hotel room together, maybe with the kids doing who knows what. If you think of things in terms of a program, it becomes a little more obvious what what things are too big of a jump, what things are a possible detriment or distraction before. Whereas, if you're not thinking in those terms, it's not necessarily obvious. We would think of like vacation with our spouse as like a perfect opportunity for reconnection. It's usually not. If you need to reconnect, that's usually you need to do several other things before you do that. Same thing in a lot of other areas, but thinking of things in terms of a program seems to help a lot of people, at least a lot of my clients, notice some of those non-obvious things that can be the distraction or the detrimental change.
That's awesome. And like, so it makes me.
But by the way, with me having COVID right now, I feel like I'm not explaining things super well today. Am I coming across right? Because I honestly
I
can't
got
tell since
you.
I'm a little
I
foggy.
got you. No, I got you. And yeah, we didn't
Okay.
set it up, by the way. Jonathan has COVID.
Yeah,
And
super fun. Do not recommend.
so, but he's knocking it out of the park. You're doing great. I think you're doing great. No, I mean, I got you. And actually, it's funny because, like, right before you started that, I wrote something kind of similar in my little notepad here. Um, but I was going to be asking about when you do the new thing, the shiny new thing. And okay, so in this case, it's not as big as like your vacation going wrong type of example, but shiny new thing meets buyer's remorse in a sense. Like, doesn't mean you have to pay it, but the idea of like you do something new and instantly freak out about it. Like, it's like, oh crap, like what if this is a terrible decision? What if this isn't going to work? Or again, or just, and a lot of times this happens, not a lot of times this happens only because it doesn't go in the exact direction you want something to immediately. And you freak out because it's like, oh crap, what if like investing is coming really to mind here. It's like you invest in something and its very first move is the opposite price direction that you want. And you're like, oh crap, what if I bought the top? Or like, oh crap, like something like that. You instantly freak out that it's going to only get worse rather than like, okay, like, it's, this is a moving thing. But, but yeah, like I kind of like, I'd be interested to kind of hear your tidbits, about how to not freak out about like instead of just like that instant change and actually let time take its course again. Because the biggest thing is time is undefeated, right? It's like we're not beating time. Like that's the one thing. Like it's undefeated. So if it's something that could legitimately be worth it, even if you don't give it any more, like you don't like even if I said that little bit of attention was enough, you may not want to stop completely if you believe in it enough that it will pay off in the long run. Again, behavioral change, investment, fitness wise, whatever it is. But yeah, so that initial freak out of change, what would be like some way you would help somebody deal with that, whether they should just let it go, continue, or change or whatever?
So it would depend on how well a person thought through their entry into whatever thing. You used investing, so I'm going to sit with that for a minute. So if somebody gets into some kind of investment, but they only thought about it for 6 seconds before they clicked buy, I can't help because they didn't get into it the right way. But if somebody has thought through, like, okay, yeah, I really want to be a part of this thing, and I'm going to commit to being part of this for at least a while, whether no matter how long that is, then part of it would be to help a person remember, like, why did you get in this in the first place? You clearly got into this investment because you believed in it. You clearly had an idea that this would go well. The fact that it immediately went the wrong way here for a second didn't change anything. Does it really change your belief that this is a good investment? It shouldn't, because markets do weird stuff all the time. But same thing for anything. Like if somebody gets into an exercise program, oh man, I can't wait, I'm going to feel terrific. And then the day after they do their first exercise program, they're sore as hell. That's basically the same thing, isn't it? And so helping a person remember, no, you got into this for other things, not because you thought you were going to feel amazing today, not because you thought you were going to make money the day after you threw in your investment. And helping to exercise some amount of patience so a person sticks with it for a real at bat, 3 months, 6 months, a year. If you're talking about investing, I mean, half the time you're talking about 10 years or 20 years, depending on your strategy. But that would be my main thing is helping people remember you committed to this and you had a good thought process for committing to it. relax. It's okay to have some bumps in the road. Let's see how this pans out.
To go right on that, what would you say in terms of anybody like where their main thing with that is just simply fixating on it, like where somebody would be better off, or how often do you think this is the case where somebody would be better off if they could just stop looking at it or thinking about it, whatever it is, like stop doing that, whether it's like a get you know get off social media, stop checking your stock market account 5 times every hour. It's like something like that. Like, so if somebody's struggling with that type of thing, like what's kind of like some action steps to like get them away so they can start separating themselves from those short-term emotions.
Honestly, you pretty well said the action step, which is ignore the stuff around you.
Oh, great.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, like that. Like that's it. If I want to make sure to stick with my exercise program, guess what? I'm not looking at on YouTube and Instagram. Different type of exercise programs,
That's true.
because
Um,
how does that help me stick to my exercise program?
yep,
You know, if I want to not panic about the stock market, guess what kind of news I don't look at?
that's a good point. And actually, yeah, like an action step that I do to do those things on my own is I will start I will start planning when I do these things. And again, that's just because I want like if it's something I want to stay on top of. But again, I know that I will impulsively do it if I just leave myself to my own devices. Is I will actually take out my planner, my schedule, and simply put it on like Fridays, whatever. I'll be like, okay, this day, check this. So at least I'm like, okay, I know it's happening, so I won't look at it 7 times a day.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, okay.
And there's a second thing with all of this that I think is worth people knowing. Uh, most plans for any kind of growth, any kind of positive change, uh, it's really good to know that the best plans are usually boring.
Yeah. Oh man, yes, that is so spot on.
If
That is
if
so
if
spot
you're
on.
excited about your plan, now be suspicious of your plan.
All right, dude. Do you know who Dan Fleischman is by chance?
Hmm.
He's one of those like hidden geniuses of there. He's I don't want to go into that rabbit hole, so to speak, but he's
Yeah, I'll
responsible
look him up later.
he's responsible for more business stuff that you would have no idea. He owns the Kardashians as influencers, stuff like that. But you have no idea who he is. But anyway, he said these exact words over the weekend because he also spoke at the event that I was at. And it was like, make it so do the boring work as soon as you can so you have as long as possible to do the stuff you want to do. And yeah, like it was exactly that. Because yeah, like if so often, like you said, like the boring things are what we just don't feel like doing, so we that's what we end up putting off or doing later. um and that just keeps compounding, so like so
Mhm.
often, and stuff ends up taking so much longer than we want it to. We don't see the changes that we want to. Like you said, like the best, yeah, that's huge. The best plans are usually boring.
Yeah, and frankly, if you keep that as your guiding star, you can almost invent your own plans for a lot of stuff without help. Like if I'm weightlifting and all I know is all my plans should be boring, okay, I picked up a 10-pound weight yesterday. I should pick up a 12-pound one today.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's it.
Yep.
Yeah, this is back to that whole like whenever I'm helping people fix a relationship example, the thing that they want to get fixated on, like, oh, I'm going to go do this really massive complicated thing, and I'm like, no, you're going to make sure to say good morning to your spouse first thing when you wake up. That's
Ooh,
what you're going to do.
yeah.
And that sounds tiny and boring and irrelevant, but that's the tiny little things that actually produce change and growth whenever you're in a change and growth process. Is it just doing the little thing over and over and over and over and over again until you're
Yep.
sick to death of it, and then keep doing it because now it's working.
Yep. Eating healthy 80% of the time will do way more for you than trying to start a perfect diet every Monday. Like exactly the same thing. Yep. So one more. So something that I wanted to go over almost again, 'cause kind of we kind of already talked about it before, but I want to go into a little bit more in depth, bringing this around. Is whenever you're looking at these new things to add into or change, really make sure you identify both what you need and what you want and try to decide it because those things will change your answers. Like if we're looking at fitness, it's like, okay, what is your main fitness goal? If your goal is all around health, simple fitness, your the number one priority is consistency in movement. Like working out more days than not, whatever that workout is going to be what leads you to that goal. So as long as you do that, in general, health and fitness is your goal. If you want to try something new, go ahead and try it. Or maybe you just need to change, like, mentally. So it's like, I'm going to go try this new workout out that I got invited to by a friend. This isn't going to change like anything else necessarily because it meets my goal of moving. However, if you are a, say, high level performance athlete and you have a powerlifting meet in 6 weeks or 8 weeks or something like that, so you need to peak a specific trait, aka be strong as hell, on that date. This would not be the good time to change your training program into something completely different. So I said the nuances of what do you want and what are you working for, like what do you need. And again, same thing financially. If your goal and this can be, you don't need to have just one type. Maybe you have enough to where you can have like different accounts for different things. You have your super super boring investment account, like your savings and bonds, whatever it is. Like your time tried and true stuff, IRAs, etc. Maybe you have a different amount that's a little bit more like play high risk stuff or whatever. But understand that difference and don't assume it's all the same. It's like I said, like, what do I need or want with this investment? Do I want this money in like 2 weeks, or do I want this money to simply be in a better place than it was 10 years from now? Just like you said, like, because
Mhm.
it doesn't mean that either of the new things you might be deciding to try as an investment are bad. They're just going to lead you to completely different places. So understanding that, and like, what do you want from the outcome, and then make like, okay, is this the one that's going to lead me to that?
Well, and let me throw something on top of that because there's a thing that people do. We The internet skews our perception of time. Uh, it has many wonderful benefits, but one of the drawbacks is that it really skews our perception of time because it allows us access to the end result of most human beings without being a part of the intervening process. And so a lot of people will set, like you're saying, kind of know what you're chasing, set the right goal. But a lot of people will set a goal that is really not very feasible in the time frame they invent.
Mhm.
That's one of the reasons that I kind of really push working on something for at least 6 months because a lot of people I mean, God, how many times have you seen an ad for freaking 6 weeks to perfect abs, right?
Yep.
Like enough to make you want to punch your computer monitor. Uh, but that's the perception of time that the internet has sadly given us. And so I always encourage people as you're setting a goal, really try as hard as you can. And of course, I'm going to say our perception is skewed and then say try and have good perception, right? Uh, so try as hard as you can to like really think through, is the goal you're setting for your program any kind of reasonable, or have you accidentally set a time frame that's really too short for you to get your results?
Hmm. That sounds like a really good place for me again to again be honest. If you can use some professional help at that point, whether it's for the whole thing or just, I mean, even just as like feedback and like consultation almost, because I mean there's a lot of things like that that you may not know the answer to, and that's okay. But if that's the case, try to go find it. try to ask somebody that, because the feasible thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's, yep. Uh, yeah. So, all right, man. I mean, I said, like, I feel really good about this talk. I think this is going to help a lot of people understand these things, and like, really, I feel like one of the main messages of today was slow down enough to think about what you're doing and why. I think that was one of the main, like, that to me is one of the main things.
Yeah, that's actually an excellent summary in that one sentence.
Yeah. So again, hope this like helps some of you guys out. Like, thanks for listening, and share, tag anybody who else will hear this. To my knowledge, this got to be broadcasted on my Facebook page, my LinkedIn page, as well as the Viking Performance Training YouTube page. I'll share it a few other times as well, so you can find it on, help somebody find it on any of those three mediums there. So again, we'll be back here in a couple of weeks with our next topic: stages of change. And
Oh, sweet.
yep, yes, sir. And particularly what to do if you mess up. I have that note written there too. So, all right, guys. See you guys then. Thanks,
See you all
brother.
next time.